Hello there, and welcome to the Second Life Book Club. My name is Draxtor Dupre, and today on the show, Tashan Mehta with her debut novel, The Liar's Weave. I shouldn't say with her debut novel because she will also be here with other things because she's a prolific short story writer as well. Now, The Liar's Weave, which I just finished this morning, is absorbing. It's heartbreaking. It's pretty complex. It's intimidating because there's so much talent with this writer. It's mind bending. It revolves around a boy who can alter reality. Story takes place in India of the 1920s. Um, the book has scheming religious fundamentalists, arguably fundamentalists. We'll ask her if my reading is correct. It has good astrologers. It has bad astrologers. It has these astrologers, by the way, most of them are drunk on their own Kool-Aid. They believe their own they're high on their own supply. The book has tribes. They're hiding in the forest. They do nefarious things. They may or may not kidnap kids who can alter reality for nefarious purposes. The the question that I want to answer today, if this book is a thriller with conspiracies, with murder, it has to me a kind of a Philip K. Dick vibe to it in some spots with these shifting realities. Is it supernatural horror? Is it a family drama? Or is it a philosophical turn paper that somehow ballooned completely out of control? Here to answer this and other questions is Tashan Mehta. Welcome to the Second Life Book Club.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Drax. I'm so chuffed to be here. I loved all of those definitions, by the way. They were all great, especially the last one, but also the Philip K. Dick one. They're all brilliant.
And I just teleported away from the own book club, and people on YouTube, they can still hear me, but people at the book club, they don't see me. So I'm going to sit back down and have a cup of tea. As I'm talking about shifting realities and people disappearing and whatnot, I actually physically disappeared. There, this is so strange. Now, what what is this book to you? I mean, I sometimes ask this question. I don't like to frame it as a pitch or an elevator pitch as
Mhm.
the techies say in Silicon Valley. So I actually want to rather ask what the book is to you.
That's actually a really brilliant question because I think I started it at a point at which I had been doing. I did an undergraduate in creative writing, and at the point at which I'd been writing a lot of realist fiction. So a lot of focusing on literary prose and on real situations and family dramas. And I think I was a little bit frustrated with the limits of that. So when you said a philosophy term paper that just ballooned out of control, I don't think you're too far from the mark with that one, because I think it was just me wanting to reach into what was possible and just kind of tear it apart a little bit. And so
Ah.
to me, this book is just I just love the idea of two co-created realities
Mhm.
that map onto each other, but then don't quite map onto each other. And I think that central concept really is just genuinely exciting to me. The origin of this book is a short story. And the origin is this boy who can change reality with his lies. And then from there, it just ballooned out of control into the world that
And
you
and
see
one
now.
of the important things for the basis of the one of the important things that makes a story work is also that when he creates a reality, it all starts with I think it starts with the box, but maybe the
Yes.
clay pot of water is better because it's broken,
Yeah.
and he repairs it so everybody sees this big clay pot of the makdi, the clay
Mm.
pot of water repaired in perfect state,
Mm.
but he doesn't. And then when his brother says, "Hey, can you get some water out of the thing?" He says, "Well, he's kind of in a bind because he broke it, and for him it's still broken, but for everybody else it's repaired."
I loved the limits of that, because I think when I originally conceptualized it, I thought to myself, well, he's all powerful.
Hmm.
But the interesting thing is when you give someone who wants power and who wants to be all powerful a very obvious limit in their power. And the obvious limit right now is he cannot see his lies. So if you know it's a lie, you basically see through it. So, for instance, if you know that the mutki is broken, then it will just be broken in your reality. Whereas for everybody else, it will be a whole mutki full of water because that's what the reality that the lie creates. And I loved the complications of that and how reality kind of siphons away from itself and then kind of reconverges over and over again. And yeah, I was just really excited
It's
about
it,
torturing my characters.
and you're torturing yourself and then try to be logical with this. I mean, I said earlier it's intimidating in the sense again. I mean, there is so much stuff in there. So I mean, and your talent is very obvious. And so when I say intimidating, it's more of me as a sort of a middle-aged guy looking at younger people and see like, oh my God, these people can write and create these worlds. It's just completely insane. So I want to because you're going to be reading a short story later, so I want to
Mhm.
read actually the very beginning, the first paragraph of The Liar's Weave, to get a feel, hopefully like a teaser for folks where they're, because I think the first paragraph, we talk on the book club often about like famous first lines. I think our friend Stranger Nightfire, who was in the audience, um, started that. I forgot, he was using Gabriel Garcia Marquez or something.
Oh, I
But I
love
think
that.
this opening line of yours is so good. So I'm going to
Mhm.
read it. On 8 June 1904, the year of the Wright brothers and the first New York City subway, the gods make a mistake. It is a he. He is pushed out of a tunnel, is suddenly cold, opens his mouth, and splits the air. He's quietened, cooed over, and handed to his mother. She calls him Sahan Merchant. And so here it's set right there. The gods made a mistake,
It
and
took
there he is.
it took a while to actually get that first paragraph, so I'm glad you like it. Touch wood.
What do you mean a while? Like how does this work? It's like do you keep that for last or for the middle, or do you sweat over it, and are you like, I can only start with this book when I get the beginning right?
Oh no, tracks. I'm a chaotic creator, so I can't even explain to you how many versions The Liar's Weave has gone through, where the plot line changed, main characters weren't introduced until like the fourth draft or the fifth draft. So I think this opening paragraph was, I would say, about the fourth draft, where I
Hmm.
was like, okay, because originally the opening was always focused on Zahan and his mother or the family, and then this opening paragraph was just a sort of wider perspective put in there to kind of just hold the whole thing together. And it just kind of stuck. It fought through all the revisions and all the cutting, just kind of remained.
It is so enticing, and it brings you in. And we'll talk a little bit about the density of the cultural background and
Mhm.
and the mythology, which you weave in there, pun intended, in a really brilliant way. And actually, the main thing with these birth charts I want to get into, I actually don't know if 100 years ago in India people actually did that. So I don't tell me now. Let's wait a few minutes. I want to start with something else first. I want to put up on the board here a few short excerpts to illustrate your writing ability, but also for you to riff a little bit if you remember that section or what that brief sentence or paragraph evokes in you. Um, I picked seven little excerpts here. Here's the first one. The boy empties, a husk capable of eating, sleeping, and moving, but not much else. Tarashant has never seen the effects of freedom.
That one actually does really, really. I think this is the one. I don't know if I want to spoil where this comes in the book, but I think it comes after a really catastrophic moment. And I remember writing that scene very clearly because I think I'd put this character Zahan through so much pain Um, and I remember writing that line of him being a husk because it was so interesting to me, and how all of that power and all of that like sense of self that he had and all of that control, he can create reality. That's insane.
Hmm.
Just ultimately narrows down to really simple things: who you love, what you can do, and where you can belong. And when those things are taken away from you.
And even without, we don't even have to go into specifics where this is happening in the narrative, because what I love here also, what is described is
Mm,
that the boy breaks down and he's devastated because Tarashan, one of the other the adult, the astrologer, a figure of authority, is giving him freedom. So
mm,
this has a really deep philosophical meaning for me that I talk with my wife all the time when we talk about the younger generation. And older
mm.
people often go like, oh, the younger generation, they have so much freedom. What are they the millennials, they what are they complaining about? And with freedom comes anxiety. And that's
Anxiety and
what
paralysis,
absolutely.
absolutely, yeah, 100%. And I think there's a lot of drawbacks to freedom, or too much freedom, actually. Not that
Hmm.
I'm advocating for dictatorships on
Yeah,
any
you want
level.
authoritarian, we know. That's what the book
The
is
God
about.
view everywhere. But no, not that I'm advocating for that. But I do think that too much freedom and the idea that you're entirely in control of everything, yeah, it can definitely have its drawbacks. I agree.
And here's another one. This also kind of stands alone. And I don't forgot what character says this, but here you goes. As a child, your parents hold a dagger of love above your head. You might not see it or even know of its existence, but it is there, quivering. And everything you do is a large attempt to keep it in place, to keep it hanging inches above your head. Now, why do we want to keep it hanging though, Tasha? Why don't we want to destroy that dagger?
I think because so this was the first opening.
Very
It was
dysfunctional relationship. Mhm.
terrible, yeah, terribly dysfunctional relationships for sure. This was the first opening of the book. It wasn't the opening paragraph, but it was at the end of the opening section, and it's the narrator who's saying it. So there's no real actual character who's saying it. But I think what I was referencing here is relationships in familial bonds that I've observed around me. Maybe that's Indian, or maybe that's just depends on the type of family you are in. Um, have that sort of deep connection to your parents and that sense of entwinement, I think, into the family unit. And often that entwinement is held in place. And this sounds terrible, but it's actually sometimes quite beautiful, with love, right?
Mhm.
And love
Mhm.
is both used as a strengthening bond, but it's also used as a manipulative tool. And anybody who's had their mother cry at them and say emotionally blackmail them will be able
Mhm.
to empathize with that.
And there is a scene in the book which I also love because again well, we haven't really explained it, but so let me do this right now. In the book, uh pretty much everybody is very dependent on the birth charts. These birth charts are read by astrologers,
Mhm,
and the birth charts, they're read when the human being turns 18, and that birth chart determines their future in terms of career path, employment, financial situation, love, marriage, and kids, and so on and so forth. So everybody is completely anxiety ridden
mhm,
until they're 18. I mean, they have a certain amount of freedom until the birth chart is read, and then boom, they have to go into trajectory.
mhm,
So this is one of the brilliant parts of the plot where people are just have essentially no free will and everything is determined. And this is a slight spoiler. The main character, the boy who can change reality, his mother changes his birth chart. And when it's read to him, it says that he will become an accountant.
yeah.
And he says, an accountant? I hate numbers or whatever he says. And then she says, well, you should have studied more in the present.
Yes,
Right?
all the Indian mothers in the world were being shadowed at that moment. um,
Is
yeah.
it the birth chart thing now? Again, this book plays 100 years ago, and I don't know, but is that thing real or did you make this up?
So this is the fun of it for Indian readers. Birth charts are very much real. I have a birth chart. I got one done. And they're done today in this day and age for
There's even
people.
the universities. I mean, that I found out there you can take courses in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're Indian birth charts that you draw, and there's a little booklet. Mine's pink with a little drawing in the front. And yeah, mine was done when I was 10, which is very wrong. It should be done when you're born. But yeah, so there are birth charts that basically map your career, map your love life, map, where you're going to go, when you're going to face any major illnesses. And obviously, these birth charts are not entirely real. Like, they get some things right by fluke, but mainly they get a lot of things wrong. They told me I'd be married twice by now. This is not true. It has not happened.
Oh
So
yeah?
yeah, they said that I could get married at 2 points in my life, both at much younger ages, and neither of those ages have happened. They are very, very wrong. Uh, but
But wait a minute. Did you do this for did your parents do this more for fun, or are they actually I don't know. I mean, did you grow up in a religious household like that where they put a certain amount of credibility into that thing?
Oh, no, not at all. So they did do it for fun, and mainly because I badgered them to do it, because I was like, this is incredible. I want to know what it says about me. And when you're young, you're so obsessed about the future, right? Will this all work out? Will like everything be okay? Will, like, I don't know, make lots of money and be brilliant and famous? And the birth charts are very, very good at feeding all your desires, but in the most polite way possible, and with tongue twisters in there. So, for instance, when my mum had her birth chart done, she was told that she would have her name in the papers, which my grandmother took to mean that my mother would be very famous. And my mother is absolutely brilliant and lovely, but she was a journalist. So her
Mhm.
name was indeed in the papers, but just not in the same
My
way.
black humor, my mind went to like, well, what about if it's an obituary? I mean, that would be okay.
Oh, that's dark, Drac. That's so dark, but hilarious.
But
Um,
wait, but so okay, sorry, I'm
mhm.
jumping in here because I'm sorry if I interrupt. Please do interrupt me. I'm also smoking if people notice that. I know it's bad for your health. I want to be the bad example. But so that is real, but it was never real that in India at any given point in time it was so ubiquitous in society, right? That's
Yeah,
you kind of made
absolutely.
that up.
Yeah, I totally made that up. And I made up the fact, obviously, that it's real, real. So it's deterministic in my novel. Like, you cannot escape your birth chart. Everything that will happen has already happened.
That's
And
the
that's,
line that they always say, yeah. The
yeah,
future, they say, what do they say? The future, I have it right here written somewhere. The future does not change, it only approaches. That's what they say, these are astrologers, or the in-betweens, you call them, the in-betweens between humans and gods.
yes, exactly. I think that it's basically the perspective is that a reality as we know it, or the present moment as we know it, is already the past for the gods. And so the birth chart that is basically recording history as it's happened. And we may be living the history, but it's already happened. You can't escape it. Except, of course, for the anomaly that is the Han merchant, who changes everything and complicates everything and makes everything a bit chaotic. But yeah, so it was a real thing. I was fascinated
Mm.
with them. I just love the idea of knowing what's going to happen. And then wondering how that changes your choices, and what you do with that. And so I knew that I just wanted to include it some way in a book, because I thought it was such a brilliant concept that you stare at some planets and they tell you who you're going to be.
Absolutely, absolutely amazing in terms of knowing your future. And by the way, I saw the camera was zooming into it. We have Shyla who prepares our slides. She prepared here a collage of different Indian birth chart examples that you can find online. You can also find, like I said, you can enroll in a course right now, and then read people's birth charts. In your book, also slight spoiler alert here. One protagonist basically falls in love with a woman, and the woman also seems to be interested in him, but her birth chart says that she's going to be married to some sort of merchant,
Mhm.
and then he kind of fakes that information. So
Yeah, he's
that,
he's very bad. He's an in between, so he's supposed to be upholding the world order, and he's
yeah.
definitely just like leveraging all the loopholes that Zahan has created to get exactly what he wants.
the boy who can change the reality around him,
Mhm.
does that include creating or making human beings disappear?
That's an excellent question. And
Yeah, yeah.
I thought of that, to be honest. I thought, what does it mean about like creation? Can he create another moon? Like does he have that godlike power? And I think he does. It's just so complicated because he has to live in the world in which he's created it. And he obviously can't see it or interact with its effects. So the bigger the lies, the bigger the gap with reality, and the more isolated and alone he becomes.
Mm.
And I think that catch 22 just kind of holds him so desperately in place because for everything that he is, Zahan does want to belong, wants very desperately to belong, actually.
Poliana in the audience here says, "I love it, and I study astrology since ever." So Poliana is maybe an in between. Hey, you give me a my birth chart, Poliana. Here's another little quote from the book. A mortal knows what a god cannot. The experience of the certain is a different cloth from the knowledge of it. Ah, it's really excellent writing here. But let me read this again. A mortal knows what a god cannot. The experience of the certain is a different cloth from the knowledge of it. So we have to live this crap that the gods sort of hand down,
Yeah,
right?
basically, yeah. That's exactly it. That's 101% it.
How is modern? I mean, this is a huge question. How
Mhm,
is in modern India right now? Would you assess for people who don't know much about
mhm,
what's going on,
mhm,
like me and maybe some of the audience, the the level of religious fervor. I mean, I can kind of answer that question myself in the sense of what I see, the
mhm,
horrible things that are happening in daily politics with the
mhm.
nationalist fundamentalist fervor. But in the general public, what would you say is kind of the religion the percentage of religious deeply religious people versus secular? Is it a secular society? Where is India today?
I think we're tilting towards non-secular, to be honest. I think deep down inside people have always been spiritual. I think that spirituality is now manifesting itself into religious fervor in a
Mm,
way that's quite it's petrifying. And it's petrifying because it's manifesting itself in people you love and people you see around and people you wouldn't have imagined it would manifest in. And I mean, sometimes you talk to circles or you live in an echo chamber, right? And you're like,
hmm.
everything's going to be fine, and then the voting results come in and everything isn't. So I think we always have had a deeper meaning in a spirituality, which I actually think is quite beautiful. But
Absolutely. Yeah, it's
now,
exploited by nefarious forces. Mhm.
absolutely, and now it's just tipped into only a certain kind of expression, which is religious fervor, and that I think that's just so dangerous.
This warrants a 3 hour show, so we can only scratch the surface. I try to keep abreast of what's happening outside of my own country and cultural realm, and I would advise this to the audience to always keep a perspective and to connect the dots a little bit what's happening internationally, because the exploitation of religious sentiment uh, by nefarious forces, I think, is a global phenomenon with local coloration all over the world. Shaila is asking a question here. Does it expressing itself, is it discriminatory or persecuting a group of people in any way? The fervor, I would
I
say so. I mean, I mean, Hindu nationalists uh, a- uh, are
Yeah.
killing Muslims left and right.
And I think I love the way you phrase that question, Shala, because actually you've hit the nail upon the head. It's not just the murders and the fervor, which is obviously horrifying, but you can ascribe that to fringe groups. It's in the articulation.
Mm.
People are feeling far more comfortable saying things that I think 10, 15 years ago people would have looked upon as horrifying to say. But people are feeling far more comfortable to say it because it's being normalized.
Th-
And I think that's scary because once it comes into your language and once it comes into your way of speech, then it gets stitched into your fabric of reality in your everyday, and then it's very hard to pull it out again.
Very well said. I have to clip this. This is very well said because I think people underestimate the normalization of violent language against marginalized groups, groups that are already marginalized. And this is done in sometimes with well-meaning media.
Mm.
I feel that they seem to be oblivious what they're doing
Mm.
in giving voice. Is a discussion I have with my dad all the time, who is my dad is a great guy, and he feels that certain voices need to be represented on panel discussions. And I feel no, they don't need to be if they're expressing an extreme violent language that then seeps into, like you're saying, into everyday conversation.
Absolutely. No, I'm 100% with you. I think it's a dangerous game to play where you say everybody has a right to a platform,
Mhm.
because I don't think they should all have a right to a platform. So, yeah, no, I fully 101% agree with you that the normalization is one of the most dangerous things you can see.
Here's another little quote: "The past is the hardest to change. The future you only have to utter, and the present focus on, or you have to focus on the present, but the past needs to be weeded. The past needs to be weeded out." I think that's the narrator saying this.
I think so too. I think is this. I'm actually trying to remember where this is from. Is this when Zahan is trying to understand the limits of his power?
I
Um,
don't know. I just randomly put this through an algorithm and it spit out these quotes. Uh,
I can't remember. This book was written so long back. I can't remember where this is from, but I think it's from when Zahan's trying to understand what he can really do with changing reality with his lies. So does it just exist in the present moment? Can it be temporally charged? Does it exist for the future? Does it exist for the past? How does it work with memory? I think that's the point where he's exploring all of these things.
and how does it feel to you when you read this now? Would you say, if somebody says that to you, would you push back on it? The past needs to be weeded? Would you push back and saying, no, no, I think the past needs to be, I don't know, analyzed and learned from?
Yeah, 101%. I think in the context of where this was written, I think he was talking about memory. So
Hmm.
stepping in there and like changing people's memories. But actually, I think coronavirus and has taught me that memory is really easy to change.
Hmm.
People buy narratives really easily. It's not that hard. People forget.
Well,
Um,
like you were saying, and I think there's a push and pull because I forgot when you said, people putting sort of extreme talking points and language into the public stream of
mm,
consciousness, so to speak. It's in a sense also making reality, and then that reality becomes alive, and then coupled with what you just said, people forgetting things. That's a double danger right there. It's multiplied.
Exactly. No, I'm nodding fervently on the other end of the screen, but yes, exactly. Yes, perfectly
We need a
articulated.
nodding animation. Where's the nodding animation?
I
What's
can't seem to
happening?
find it. There's a whole bunch of chocolate ones, but I can't seem to find any
Oh,
nodding.
chocolate. I think I'm gonna get myself some chocolate. The smoking is making me a little bit antsy here. Here we go. Yeah, so um now I lost my train of thought because we're in reality, we're in the book. Um oh yeah, the what I mentioned earlier, what was fascinating to me reading this is it's one of those books that I read along with Wikipedia. By the way, if you're just tuning in, uh Tashan Mehta is here with us, and I am looking at the chat. Oh, Kitten Duo is on YouTube. Kitten, welcome. Good to see you. And John is on the YouTube chat, and a bunch of other people. Shyla will put out some links here for our YouTube audience and also in the local chat. Um, Tashan Mehta is on the Second Life Book Club today with her book, The Liar's Weave, we're talking about. And it is one of those books where I'm sitting there with Wikipedia and cross-checking things and learning things. So again, it plays in the 1920s, and there was a Criminal Tribes Act.
Mm.
Uh, the book has this tribe. They're hidden in the forest, and they would be criminals under this Criminal Tribes Act that was instituted in the 1870s and was revoked. I forgot when,
Mhm.
mid 20th century. But talk a little bit about this Criminal Tribes Act.
So one of the things that really was attractive to me about the 1920s, I gravitated towards that time because there was a subplot in the book which got cut in the final version, but you can see echoes of it about the freedom movement. And the 1920s to me was a really interesting time about
Right, there was
independence.
the freedom movement. Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, give us a
Absolutely.
little bit of an overview there, please.
So no, it was just basically whole bunch of people were starting to band together, and essentially the freedom movement was really gathering steam at about this time. There was the Boycott Act, and there's the Quit India movement, and everybody was kind of getting in together to say, you know what, we want independence now. Enough is enough. We deserve to exist on our own. And the more that I did research about this time, the more that I learned. First off, there's this really fascinating series of books. I can't remember the name, but about Bombay in the 1910s and the 1920s. And it's just the most beautiful city being described in there. And the amount of nostalgia I felt for a city I'd never seen was just absolutely magnificent. Um,
Freedom from the British colonizers. Let's just make clear
yeah,
that we understand what we're talking about. Yes.
yeah, absolutely. Sorry, freedom from the British colonizers. And it was really interesting to me because you started looking at a lot of legislation and realizing how a lot of legislation that was put forward was less in the name of justice and more in the name of making life obviously easier for the British in India. And the Criminal Tribes Act was one of those pieces of legislation. I did research on it a very long time ago, so I may be wrong, but if I'm not mistaken, it was just basically the British being like, these people roam around a lot, they feel like bandits, they look like bandits, they don't form or obey the rules of society the way in which we understand the rules of society. Let's criminalize them and let's put that in an act. And consistently throughout history, there's always this sort of legislation where the British just wouldn't look at how Indians at that time conceptualized society and then just decide it was immoral and so put it in
Hmm.
an act and make it illegal. And I found that just really interesting because I found ways of being were basically being outlawed. Ways of
Hmm.
being were just basically being told, you're normal, you're not. So when
Exactly, and in the book, I think it's really, really important because our again, like we've been discussing. I mean, the whole astrology thing
Mhm.
is I mean, from a I don't know, from a logical, secular standpoint, it's pretty absurd that people believe in this. And then at the same time, these universities that are also then, I guess, fictional, they're
Yeah.
these holy sites, but you make them into universities. They're basically, it's just like, hey, we have the monopoly on telling people the future. We can't let these other people like come up with alternative things. So let's outlaw them with the Criminal Tribes Act, right?
I
I
love
mean,
it.
it's like I don't. I mean, what's the difference between a cult and a religion? That kind of question you bring up in the book all the way through. I mean, it's quite brilliant. Now I'm curious what subplot got cut. But my other question would be: were you afraid of having too much of this historical backdrop in there? Was that a challenge? No, this is a completely different question, more about craft. Kind of get the the tone right, or like the mix of things between the kind of actual backdrop and sort of more drier things and and the the plot and the bigger philosophical questions.
Yeah, Drax, can I just say, I think you are my ideal reader. Thank you so much for opening Wikipedia and reading the book and for these questions.
Oh, thank you. I will print business cards tomorrow where on the one side it says Drexter and on the other side it says your ideal reader. And I will pass these out at conventions until they file a restraining order. Thank you.
No, I think, and I love that you've caught on to this because I think readers who can sense the tone and feeling and the unsaid echoes in a text pick up on this. But you're entirely right. I was concerned. So that subplot about the independence movement got cut because I think I got to a point where I went, this is a philosophical treatise that has ballooned out of control. I want to make it 80,000 words because I want to be intelligent about how big I make this book. And just for future reference, never be intelligent and just make the book as big as you want it to be. Uh,
Absolutely. We had Ken Liu here who churned out like 3,000 pages in his crazy. Anyways, you can watch that later. But
Yeah,
yeah,
no, absolutely. And I agree with him
don't let
now.
anybody tell you that people don't want big books.
I know, absolutely. And I wish I could time travel and go back and tell little Tasha that she was just wrong. But it was exactly that, that feeling of how do I handle this intelligently and sensitively, but also not crowd the book with too many things. And I think I came to that point where I went, I can't do this justice in the amount of words that I've decided this book should be. I'm just going to take it out. So there was partly that fear of not doing it justice well enough. And if you're not going to do it justice well enough, take it out. But also that sense of, do I have the ability to handle this as carefully as it needs to be handled?
Well, I think the the result that is in my hands, at
Mhm.
least in electronic form, is like I said, very, very good and also mature in the best sense of the word. Now, yeah, I mentioned Wikipedia. I also learned about the Mahabharata. Is
Mahabharata, yeah.
how do you pronounce this?
Mahabharata,
Mahabharata.
yeah.
Okay, so Mahabharata is a book that is probably even bigger than Ken Liu's trilogy or or whatever it is. The Mahabharata is one of the two major Sanskrit epics of ancient India. Its longest version consists over 200,000 individual verse lines and long prose passages. So here Shaila prepared this slide. There's comic book versions here with Ganesh is on one of those.
Mm.
And yeah, I don't know why I'm bringing this up, but it's mentioned in the book a couple of times. And like I said, I always like to then go to Wikipedia or make notes. I also actually recommend when you read, maybe don't have the phone next to you, write it with a pencil and then later look it up. So, but
Yeah.
I love to do that.
Mhm.
Would you recommend people read the Mahabharata or?
I think if you're up for a really, really, really interesting challenge, I think there are abridged versions of it, which actually are what children grow up on, right? Because your grandmother tells you stories or your parents tell you stories of it. But if you read the actual Mahabharata, like the translated version, I think it goes into volumes. I think there's 7 volumes of the
Yeah,
Mahabharata, and it is a tough read.
yeah.
Yeah.
You
So
don't have
no,
no,
yeah,
you
I
don't have
think
to read it.
yeah, I would say get the stories and read the stories, and then if you're super interested, because to be fair, they do have a really lovely nesting device in the Mahabharata. It's just carried out across 7 volumes, so that's intense.
Well, we're an educational program here, Tashan, so that's why I needed to throw this out. I also want to throw out that Kabir Das is also mentioned, a poet.
Oh yes, I
So
love
this is
him.
an important poet and nice little plot line in the book about the astrologer who loves this poet, and then his love interest, the woman who likes Western writers, English writers, and
Mm.
they kind of meet, and it's just wonderfully told. So I just love taking these notes and then checking out the historical context. And then finding out more. I mean, this is again. I mean, this is the theme weekly here in the book club about what books can do to us in that simple sort of, I don't know, facts or scientific texts cannot.
Yeah,
The
it just
story,
expands your
yeah,
world, doesn't it, in the most beautiful way possible. I highly recommend Kabir Das, by the way. I'm not very good at Hindi or Urdu, but I had to study him in school, and then I read a bit of him, and it's absolutely beautiful. His dohas are stunning. I highly recommend him. If you can find a translation, please pick him up. He's brilliant.
Oh, Kathy here in the audience says it's so vast in religions of India. I love delving into it. Just want to also acknowledge our audience. If the camera can go towards the audience, we have such a diverse audience here. We have an alien dude by the name of Julian here in the very back. He looks kind of sincere, but I think he's enjoying the program. We got Vanderveer here on a balloon and also Poliana on a balloon. So if you have questions and comments, please put them in the chat. If I don't pick it up, doesn't mean I don't think it's important, but I might save it for later. Don't feel bad about cut and pasting it again, the question, if I don't pick it up, um, because it may just go by very quickly. Now, one term that I couldn't find in Wikipedia is Hatha Daiva.
Hmm.
So you
Yeah, the
kind of
unfortunate.
what is that? What is their role in the book?
There's actually a really, really beautiful academic paper written about this, about language in The Liar's Weave by Emma Verghese, actually. It's just a really beautiful paper. She's done an excellent job. But the Hatha is a derivative from Sanskrit and essentially means the unlucky or the unfortunate. And I think I just had so much fun naming things because it's what we said about articulation, right? We come back to that. So I wanted to pull in on languages and pull them all together and knit them together. So yeah, I'm not surprised you couldn't find the word because it's never used in that context and it's been changed. But its derivative is a Sanskrit term for the unfortunate.
Hmm. And what are the unfortunate then in the story? So because that's very interesting, and part of them. I mean, they come together in this tribe, and they have their goals. But what is their problem? What problem do they have?
So I think in a world where you have birth charts and everybody's future is kind of fixed, there are people obviously who have normal lives, equal amounts of happiness and sadness. There are people with extremely fortunate lives, and then there are people with astonishingly unlucky lives. That lives that are just absolutely horrible.
Even more horrible than becoming an accountant.
Even more horrible than playing with numbers for the rest of your life. And I think it was so interesting to me that often people who live truly terrible lives live it not knowing that it won't get better, right? There's always hope. There's always that idea that it will change and they will escape and that things will get much better. But obviously, in the case of the Hatha Deva, they know it won't change because they have their birth chart. And when you get a birth chart like that, it has this knock-on effect where society starts shunning you because you're bad luck. And so it's bad luck piled upon bad luck, piled upon bad luck, which is why they flee and they gather in this forest and they form this community called Vidroha. And what they're seeking to do is upend the world order. They're trying to find a way in which to change reality, basically, all these
Hmm.
birth charts to rewrite their futures and create hope.
And
And
that's why they find, obviously, when they find Zahan, who can change reality, they go like, yeah, this is the jackpot. So this is a
absolutely.
little bit your commentary also, I guess, on the caste system, because I mean,
Yeah.
in the
No, it
caste
is.
system, there are people who are the outcasts.
Absolutely, and treated truly, truly horribly, and whose lives don't get better because of just the status that they're born in. So yes, 101%. I don't know enough because it's such a complex and nuanced issue. And I'm learning the more that I interact because I'm Parsi, so technically I exist outside of the caste system because I'm not Hindu. Uh,
Hmm.
but obviously I have the history of the caste system and we have all the narratives and witnesses and the stories of what the caste system have done. So I think it was the impact and the influence of that, of just a whole bunch of people just being told they're less than for no fault of their own.
Are Parsi above the automatically on a higher caste?
No, we're just a different religion. So the caste system belongs to
Oh,
Hindus. So the Hindus have the four different castes, so the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishnavas, and the Shudras, which is the lowest and the caste system. Um,
see, I made a mistake in my prep, see, because I looked at the top religions in India, and I
yeah,
couldn't I couldn't see it.
because we're so tiny, we're dying out, Drax.
You're less than Jews.
Yeah, we're a completely and utterly invisible race. Actually, India has the largest collection of Parsis in the world, but we are just so tiny. We're genuinely dying out. We're a dying culture. So yeah, so I exist outside of the caste system because I just don't share the
Ah,
religion of the caste system.
okay. Now, the caste system applies to Hinduism only, and Hinduism here on the chart that we have up here is some 80 plus percent in
Hmm.
in India right now. Matter
Hmm.
of fact, Stella here asks, the division between Hindus and Muslims was at one time very divisive. Have those kind of religious tensions eased among Indians? I can tell you, Stella, no. They've actually increased, and there is a lot of legislation put in under Modi that is rolling back achievements. I mean,
Yeah.
just like in every other country. Stella also asks, is the caste system still entrenched socially, or are caste restrictions easing? But as Tashan is saying, you might not be,
Yeah, I'm not
you
the
don't
best
feel
person to
qualified
ask that,
to.
but from my experience, no. I think it's not. It's gotten better, I would say, superficially, but there's obviously entrenched behaviors that haven't changed, and biases and ways of functioning, and superiority complexes as well, that have just kind of, because you can't erase generational trauma that easily, right? It's not going to shift in one generation, or generational
Absolutely.
privilege. So yeah, absolutely. So it's definitely there. It's outlawed technically in the law, but it's definitely there.
And you see almost daily news, even on the German 15-minute news at the end of the day. You see horrible things going on in India with violence against Muslims. Anyways, please do keep track of this stuff, folks. Look at well, I'm conflicted about that. You should also not doom scroll, but doom scroll and engaging with deeper content is not the same thing. Anyways,
Agreed.
Sapta, we're going to get to a reading in just a second, but I also want to touch on the Sapta Puri, which is cool because these are seven holy cities in India, and
Hmm.
but in your book they are actually, then they you morph them into universities where astrology is taught. So it's
Yeah.
really cool because I said, now that I'm talking to you, I realize you did create an alternate history in a way. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's an alternate. It's really, and that's those kind of Philip K. Dick vibes that I got out of this too, in a way. I mean, this is a history that is could have been, yeah.
It's so interesting to me because I was deeply influenced and have always been deeply influenced by Man in the High Castle, by the small
Look at that.
changes. Yeah, the small changes he made to history that just had this absolutely beautiful knock-on effect to just create a very vastly different reality. I've always loved that, and I thought the subtlety of how he did it was astonishing. So yes, 101% deep admiration there.
This is pretty cool. Um, Now you're going to be reading from a book called Magical Women.
I
It's
am.
an anthology, and you know, I gotta be little bit provocative here. Women seem to really dominate the publishing industry. I mean, it's really, isn't that unfair to men?
I mean, I'm going to say that you've got like about 300 to 500 years of an advantage here. So I'm going to take the 20 years that we've had so far. But yeah, no, I know what you mean. But no, it's been nice been really, really nice actually to see the focus on female stories. And I feel like also just have space, and give yourself permission to explore that part of you as in depth as you would like to explore it, because you know that the audience that will pick it up will come from a place of understanding. And that's why I love Magical Women.
I also have the sense that in speculative fiction circles, there is a lot of really awesome pushback by younger women towards sort of established older men.
The,
There's a bunch of examples. I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but just generally, do you have that sense? Is that
yes, absolutely. I think there's a lot of. I feel like there's a stillness of the world order, basically, and I think people are just want to shake things up a little bit. They've got to a point where they've said, "What you've told me is the status quo, or what is normal, or what is reality is actually just your normal and your reality." And there's whole other ways of being, experiencing, telling stories, thinking, forming concepts, emoting, and it's time that those different ways got some space, and articulation.
Now let's do a little reading. This is from a story called Rulebook for Creating a Universe. This is a little bit of a longer reading than we usually do. Um, if I can ask you to attempt to stand up, and we removed all the walls, so you're not gonna bump into any walls. Don't be afraid. The lectern is right here. This is
I can
you
do this. I
you
believe
can
in
do it.
myself. Right.
Yeah,
Okay. There we go.
you can lie yourself into being able to do this.
I think we have achieved moderate success. No,
Yes,
wrong
you're
side.
standing. Yes, now you're turning, 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 turning.
There we
This
go.
is
Right side.
this is
There
the
we go.
best part of the program.
Right. Do I need to walk forward slightly? There we go.
Yes.
We
Oh,
did
I would like to have a big round of applause
it.
from this wonderful audience. Please look at this, and we have alumni here. I saw Mike Watson in the audience earlier, who is an alumni of this program, a wonderful author. Check out Mike Watson on the playlist, and then get his books. He also was able to. I think Mike didn't even stand up, but anyway,
I
Tasha,
would.
please go. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just want to say that when we did this in rehearsal, there was a lot of me falling off stage and walking into walls until Drax was like, right, okay, no stage, no walls. We've got this. We'll move the lectern if we have to. We've got this.
Yeah.
Um, right. So would you like me to read all the extracts, Drax, or just one?
I think I mean we have about 10 minutes to read or so. So 10 or a little bit over.
Perfect.
It's
Okay.
if you please set it up the way you feel it needs to be set up. I have not read it.
Okay.
Um so I don't want to spoil it either because I couldn't if I wanted to.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so Magical Women is basically an anthology of feminist speculative fiction stories. And I was in Cambodia at the time when I got Sukanya Venkatragavan sent me an email saying, hey, Samit Basu's recommended you. Do you want to write for this anthology? And about the day before she sent me this email, I had just visited a lotus weaving center and I'd watched them break open this stem to find these beautiful gossamer silver threads inside that then they were weaving to create fabric. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, if I could see the fabric of time, I imagine that was what it would look like. And that
Mm.
was the seed for this entire thing called Rulebook for Creating a Universe. And it's too long of a story. It's got about 3 extracts in it that I'm going to read from the beginning, the middle, and the end. So I'm going to read one, I'm going to pause, I'm going to explain what happens, read the other, pause, and then just read the end to you. I
Wonderful.
think, yeah, so I think what I found really beautiful about creating this story is I got to the Me Too movement had been happening obviously around this time. And there was so much anger and there was so much rage. But there was also so much quiet solidarity. And there was so much love and people standing out for each other and holding out hands and being like, I know you've gone through pain. I'm here. I'm with you. And I found that so empowering and so stabilizing, I think, more than anything else. And also, like, there was a place for all of us in the world. And I think that's what this story reflects, that feeling, not necessarily of anger, but of the quiet change that is made when one woman holds out a hand to another and says, it doesn't matter if the world agrees or disagrees, I see you, I understand. And yeah, and that's where it came from. So I'm going to read you the beginning and then I'm going to give you a bit more context.
Rulebook for Creating a Universe by Tashan Mehta.
In an island that floats at the beginning of time, there is a rule book for creating a universe. This book is old, with instructions on how to make forever worlds. It says, when stitching a universe, think carefully about the kind of sun you want. Will it be hot or cold, moss or vein? Your sun will last forever, and your planetary color palettes will depend on it. Choose wisely. Follow the blueprint. Beloved, you know this story. You know Yukti is a weaver on this island before time, and she hates weaving. Her mother must put the lotus stalk in her hand, and even then she will scowl at the water until her mother says, faster, Mumu, we don't own time. So Yukti, who also hates the nickname Mumu, will snap open the stalk to reveal filaments of silver that she thinks look like spit. These are the fibers of time. She will rub them together to make a thread,
and begins stitching the banana leaf she is assigned. This is how a single universe is made. On this island, one leaf at a time. Leaves make a tree, trees and rivers make a planet, planets create a galaxy, and galaxies form a universe, small to large. This is what Yukti's mother tells her as she brushes her daughter's hair at night. She wants Yukti to apply herself. We're doing good work, Mumu. Her daughter leans back into her chest, happy. Are you listening to me? Her daughter shakes her head, giggling. You're not listening to me, you shaitan. Her mother tickles her until Yukti squeals. On days her mother takes pity on her, Yukti is sent to harvest the lotuses. This she loves. She's the only girl on the boat, but she belongs. Even the men know it. They send her into the thick patches of lotuses where the boat cannot push its nose, and she wades among petals as large as her torso. The water, which is biting cold, grows warmer as she clutches a lotus stem, then hot when she holds the slippery knife and hacks through it. Her brother tells her in conspiratorial whispers that this is because the lotuses go all the way down to the beginning of time. But there is nothing in her life until now, nothing really, that explains why the lotuses one day bend their heads and begin talking to her.
Hmm.
Yukti doesn't understand the lotus's language. It is color that blooms across her mind, the scent of faint perfume, trails of thought that writhe and curl like reeds. It changes her. One day she blinks and the island dissipates, breaking into a zillion fine particles of gold dust. She blinks again and the world coalesces, regrowing its outlines. She trembles. She begins to dream of volcanoes. She doesn't know what a volcano is. They've never made one on this island. She tries to describe it to her brother, and he tells her that she means a melted sun, that's all. So she starts thinking of suns. Apoy, why can't we make suns? Her best friend Apoy puts down the fern she is stitching and thinks. They are sitting on a platform that floats in the endless water of their island. Water and lotuses, that's all their island before time is made of. Apoy thinks hard. It is not a normal question. No one here asks these things. But Apoy is the best student in the village, and so she finds an answer. Because suns are big and require strength, she explains. Boys are stronger. Girls have deft fingers and so can stitch forests and rivers. Yukti wasn't looking for the textbook version. We can do it too, she says, surly but under her breath. Apoy doesn't hear. The rulebook for creating a universe talks about lotuses. It says, beware. Lotuses may shimmer and turn to gold dust when you hold them. Ignore this. Hold fast and cut the stalk as low as you can reach. If the lotuses talk, don't listen. Never listen. Yukti has listened.
So this is the opening of a story, basically, where she's very, very slowly being drawn into these objects and this universe, this island before time where they create universes. And as you can probably guess from all the setup, she's very slowly but surely being pulled into this enchanting sort of conversation with the lotuses that's deeply forbidden.
This is so awesome. Now I regret. I see. I only read page one to time how long the stories, which I usually do.
Mm-hmm.
And then I told you, you got to cut it down because it's too long. And now I was like, oh no, we want to hear the whole story. But anyway, so people can. I think this you can buy. Actually, I can buy this in Germany, at least as an ebook, which is an issue with Liar's Weave. But anyways, people go, and maybe somebody can put in a link. To the ebook before we get the second part of the story to magical women. Also, welcome Shadow Blade in the audience. Shadow says, I wonder if there are snakes on the island because Shadow is a big snake and he's sitting right next to you, but he's very benevolent. Okay. Now comes the second part of the story. Yes.
Yeah, it definitely does. I also want to say before I launch into it that Podcastle, and you can just Google this, has done an audio narration of this story by Suna Desai, which is more accessible because you can listen to it as you walk around or do chores. And she's done an incredible job. I listened to it and I went, oh, this is why you get audio narrators who know what they're doing. But yeah, she's done an absolutely amazing job. So go have a listen. It's available anywhere that you can find podcasts as well. But so basically, Yukti's being drawn slowly and surely into this conversation, and her mother starts to get desperately worried because she's realizing that lines are being crossed that cannot be uncrossed. And so she starts watching her daughter like a hawk, and she starts worrying about whether or not her daughter is behaving correctly or normally. And slowly but surely, Yukti starts changing. She starts becoming the best daughter that there is and doing everything that she's asked. She just puts up with the fact that everybody's shadowing her all the time. She just seems to be completely and utterly docile until her mother reaches that point of calm and belief that Yukti is absolutely fine. And then the moment her mother does, and the moment her mother slips into complacency, Yukti slips out in the middle of the night and she goes on her own to the lotuses. And that moment where she sees them for the first time, beautiful and quiet in the moonlight, and she's staring at them, and then they grab hold of her and they pull her straight down into the center of the lake. And that moment is horrifying because even when I wrote it, I wasn't sure if they were friendly or benevolent or just evil. You're right, Drax. A lot of my stuff does tend into horror and does go into dark places.
Yeah, but you don't know, but you gotta go where the
story wants to go. Yeah, absolutely. So that she's pulled down into it, and the line is, she opens her mouth to say please, but water pours down her gullet. The lake closes over her head with a whoosh. The last thing she sees is lotuses hazy through the water. They look hungry. And this is the extract then I will read, which is a conversation with the lotuses. So in the beginning, there were ideas. They streamed through the void as gold particles, content to go nowhere. Then similar ideas began to coalesce. They moved out of the neat lines they followed and clustered into logical order. This idea first, that particle second, and so on. In this way, they made time. These threads spun themselves into an island, floating in the void. They curl into seeds and become lotuses so that they could open their faces to the void, feel its cool touch. They wanted to have faces. They called to their brothers and sisters still journeying across the void. They asked them to join the island and feel what it was to be. Several did. They rained down and melted and bumped into the lake you now drown in. They even made you, bronze-skinned and yellow-eyed. They gave you only one command: make. But you listened wrong. Why are you telling me this? Yukti asks. She is floating in water that is golden, green, and blue in different shimmers, like it cannot make up its mind. She isn't breathing, so she must be dead. But the heart of the island is staring at her like she is anything but. Why did you come to us? The heart asks. Yukti doesn't know how to translate her yearning into the lotus's language. She wants to burst out of her skin and flower into a jungle so complex no one could weave it. So instead she says, you are dying. You heard wrong, the heart says. When did we ask you to snap us open and weave with our innards? What use is dead time to you, silver like old hair? You were meant to shape the void as we shaped you, by tilting your head to the sky and listening to where the ideas wanted to go. When did you grow deaf? So that's the second extract. And what happens at the end of this is she travels back to the village and she's just full. She's full of this knowledge and she's full of this idea and she's full of this complexity. They've basically been making universes that cannot change. They've been making dead universes
nothing grows, nothing evolves. There cannot be volcanoes in this place. And she goes back to her mother, and she's absolutely full of this wisdom, and she wants to share it. And as always happens in these stories, the village basically turns on her, and they basically lock her up. And her mother tries to protect her, so does her family, but it doesn't work. They just throw her behind bars, and they call her mad. And they write the rule book for creating a universe in response to her. So no one will ever be Yukti again, and no one will ever go talk to the lotuses and come back with madness, basically. And the part that I loved writing, was her mother goes and frees her along with a whole bunch of other women. And it's basically, it says some things Yukti's mother says as she presses her daughter to her chest, and they cry with an emotion that cannot be held in language, can only be done in silence at night. And that to me was really important, in the quiet resistance, in the soft ways in which you keep surviving. And then I wanted to read the end of this because I love the end dearly from the bottom of my heart. So the mother frees her, and they leave, and Yukti weaves this small, tiny seed of a universe, not a whole universe, just a seed of it. And she throws it out into the void. And this is the last section of the short story. Yukti's seed, pushed deep into the void skin, will burst. It will carry colors of its own. The particles in it will link and dissolve and link again into formations that will burn our eyes when viewed through our telescopes. It will create mountains that crush us and ocean depths we cannot touch. It will spiral up and down and up the dunes of existence. We will keep trying to cross them. It will have volcanoes. But let us leave grandeur to science. Let us leave language to itself. Get up and go into the sun, beloved, to the edge of a world that houses you. You are on a beach. You spent the morning scared of a future you cannot predict. You spent the afternoon trying to map out different possibilities to create a rule book of your own. You've prayed to this universe for the only thing it cannot give you: certainty. Now let it go. Breathe in the salt. Watch the gold glint on the crest of a wave. And walk to where the crabs make their maps and the sea tries to drown them. Let a wave recede and press your toe into the wet sand it leaves behind. Watch it erupt into gold. This is your inheritance. Listen.
And that was Tashan Mehta reading from Rulebook for Creating a Universe from the Magical Women anthology. Wonderful, wonderful reading, Tasha. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I mean the themes. I have to say, there are certain themes that you seem to love.
I do, yes. I come back to them all the time. Chaos is one.
Chaos, and I mean, it's always, I think, also subjective what people feel is dark or depressing versus uplifting. I have this discussion with a friend of mine all the time about One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where I think One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest ending is a hopeful, wonderful ending, and she finds it completely depressing. We
Mhm.
can talk about this stuff for hours, but where do you think that your fondness for these questions also of certainty? I mean, this is, I mean, I think any kind of normal person should reflect on these things all the time, frankly.
Mhm.
But I think most people distract themselves so that they don't have to reflect on things like certainty, determinism, free will.
Yeah,
Tashan, if I
absolutely.
were your shrink, I mean, why are you
Why
so
am I so?
preoccupied with these stuff? Why don't you just, play tennis or watch Netflix?
It's because I can't play tennis. I don't have the coordination.
You heard it here first. If you want a well-adjusted individual who doesn't sort of like just, get sort of down and just think about things that they can't change, send them to a tennis academy early on.
No, but in all seriousness, I think a theme in all of my work is I'm just fascinated, and the name I'm giving it right now is wilderness. What does it look like when we live outside of the lines drawn for us, or the lines we've drawn for ourselves? What
Sorry,
is
you were
it?
breaking up a little bit. Did you say wilderness?
Yeah, wilderness. I'm
Mm-hmm,
absolutely fascinated by wilderness. And
mm-hmm,
what does it look like when we live outside the lines that are drawn for us or that we draw for ourselves? What does it look like when we embrace chaos and therefore plurality and therefore multitudes?
mm-hmm,
And I think that's just an essential part of what interests me, the madness of it.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That is very interesting. I feel very much connected with that as well. Also, I think it's good if you're thinking about these things. I think then maybe you're less surprised when society actually does collapse. I mean,
You're prepared.
I'm not a prepper at all, like one of those guys, but to believe that this stuff is sort of written in some sort of law of physics that civilization will sort of go on in this way, that's kind of an absurd belief, frankly.
It is, yes, absolutely. I think assuming that things will stay static is ridiculous. Yeah, absolutely.
Angelica says she's a teacher, says wilderness is my kindergarten classroom. Angelica lives in the wilderness all day.
She's a brave one. She's embracing chaos at a very real level every single day. That's brave.
Oh, Stella here says, are we merely physical containers that decide our view and how we interact with chaos?
That's it, Stella. That's a brilliant question.
Mm.
I've just come back from 2 days at CERN, where we
Oh, at
explored.
CERN in Switzerland?
Yeah, CERN in Switzerland, which is why I'm in
What do
Europe
they
right
do
now.
what do they do there? Please give us a quick. We don't know anything. We watch television all day.
So they've built this collider basically to try and find the beginning of the universe and understand what happened at the beginning of the universe. And they ran a workshop where they invited a whole bunch of writers, including me and academics and scientists together. And they just asked us questions about possibilities of like all the technology they've developed to observe these protons and observe the Higgs boson particle and what happens at the beginning of the universe. All of that has application outward as well in society and in peace and sustainability and consciousness. And they just chatted with us to imagine where that would come from, and what we could do with that. But one of the questions that kept cropping up was perspective. How locked are we in our perspective, and does the universe only look like this because we're the ones looking at it?
Mhm.
And so, yeah, that was a question that I've grappled with quite a bit over the past couple of days. I have zero answers, but yeah.
They asked you, they wanted to learn from you. They wanted to do an interdisciplinary thing, these physicists and specialists of the Large Hadron Collider. I'm pasting here the URL for for their website if people want to find out. The Large Hadron Collider was also involved in the fear of the universe completely collapsing several years ago. I forgot when that was. But
um,
did they want to? Because I find it actually quite fascinating and awesome when physicists and researchers meet with professional liars, writers, novelists, and such to kind of put their minds together, envisioning the future societal structures and beyond. Is that kind of what was happening?
Yeah, it was. I think learn is a strong word because they're just so incredible, aren't they? They're so smart and they have such a careless intelligence where
Yeah, but
it
it's a
spreads
two-way
across
street,
everything.
right? I mean, you may have been intimidated, but it's such a two-way street. I mean, there's so many examples of famous scientists being so influenced by speculative fiction, sci-fi, right?
Exactly. That's what they were drawing on. So there was a point at which science and literature was in deep conversation with each other, right? Where scientists were reading sci fi and were inspired by it, or at least the way in which something was conceptualized was helping them think through some of the very real mathematical problems they were grappling with. And so they said, well, let's start that tradition again. come back in, and let's see whether you can be inspired by us to write new books, and new ways of thinking, and whether we can be inspired by you and what you see and how you see it.
Mm.
And it was a fantastic 2 days. Everybody there was incredible. There were so many great ideas. I've a whole notebook full of them. It was amazing.
27 kilometers long particle accelerator, absolutely amazing. Please check this out. This is quite fascinating. Maybe they just want their particle accelerator in like a TV show, just like the Pentagon is giving money to Hollywood to put their
they
helicopters
all
into.
they've
Yeah.
already they're already in a movie. They're in Angels and Demons. They've already
Oh,
gotten in there. Yeah, they're already in the movie. They've got fame. They've got that.
okay, we're racing towards the end of the program, bottom of the hour.
Hmm.
If people have questions, please post them now. I'm looking also here on YouTube. Kitten Duo, thank you for your support. Thank you so much. Kitten Duo is a big fan of the show, and we hope that we see you in World sometime. She watches on YouTube. Glenn Zuckman says, "Great job standing up. You
Thank
look
you.
you look awesome with your book on the podium." There you go.
Thank you so much. I really needed that, and I feel very delighted. This is a huge achievement. Thank you.
Our snake in the audience, Shadow Blade, says, "Is there a giant snake-sized book I can chew on?" Now, Shadow, I apologize for not being prepared for you coming today. Your chew toy. Oops, he's encroaching on the stage here. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I'm sorry, Oh no. Oh no, he's snapping at you, Tashan.
Oh, is he? I can't see. Oh, there he
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah.
Hi.
He's an extremely nice snake. Also, he loves to read. Um, Now Stella is asking, as a woman author, have you felt the access to publishing agents has become easier? And what is your opinion on how your books are categorized by the publishers? Okay, so question number one, has it become easier? From I don't know, from when? From the 50s? Uh,
It's
and the categorization. This is a question that comes up all the time, which I find really interesting. A lot of writers, they just hate categories, and writers always say like, well, it's easier to put them in the shelf in the store. But
yeah, no,
yeah,
it's easier to market us, isn't it, if you put us in a box.
yeah,
I would say that it's difficult to answer the question about being a female and have it easier to get an agent because it's wrapped up very much in me being Indian as well. So while I do think there
that's
is a
actually she's questioning about that too. The
yeah,
challenges of in
exactly.
India.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So both those questions are very much entwined. And I would say that there is a lot of push for marginalization right now, marginalized writers to get the voices, and be put forward in a certain way. And I think that's absolutely brilliant. And we do need a lot more of that. But I think right now the problem is, marginalized in inverted commas is defined in a certain way through a certain lens and through a certain perspective. So the Liar's We, for instance, was not picked up in the West because, and Drax, you know this because you struggled to get a copy, because it
Yes,
was a lot of people just wrote back and said it's too alien for our readers. They won't know whether birth charts are real or are not real. It's just basically, it's not the kind of simple categorization of India that people could slip into or
this
people
is
would
making me
understand.
furious. I mean, I'm sure that it makes authors furious, but me as a reader, I feel offended by this. This is infantilizing uh, the reader, that there are gatekeepers in between who want to tell me what I understand or don't understand.
Absolutely, and I do think I understand where it's coming from because they need to market, right? They have to show sales figures at the end, and they've got data that proves that people only buy a certain kind of book. But obviously, people only buy a certain kind of book if that's the only kind of book on the shelves. So, right,
Absolutely becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If they don't put the marketing campaign out, I don't want to bore people with my stories when I was a young wee little lad in the music industry, and I have this one anecdote. I'm not going to tell it now because it's too long, but a similar thing of a gatekeeping thing of a big company, and these things become a self-fulfilling prophecy. In the case of book, what you were saying, if the book's not on the shelf, it can't be sold. If there's no campaign behind it, you can say, "Oh, there's no numbers. Okay, we did that once and it didn't work out, so we're never going to do it again." But the first time they did it, they probably didn't put any marketing muscle behind it.
Exactly that. Absolutely 100% exactly that. But having said that, things are slowly changing only because there are authors from India that have broken through and that are complicating that dynamic of, this is what, say, Indian fiction looks like. And that's interesting because that gives us more freedom. I'm strongly on the side of an Indian writer or any writer, an African writer, writing what they want to write. They don't have to write what you think their version of India should be. They can just write what they want. And in fact, my next novel is an absolutely batshit insane book across three
Ooh.
different universes that
Ooh.
hardly references India at all. Because that to me was what was interesting and what I needed, and what I wanted to write. And I think that that's important, giving the marginalized writers the freedom to be everything and anything they want to be whenever they want to be. That's the same privilege that is afforded to, say, a white writer. And I think we're getting there. It's just, it will take us a while. The change is a bit slower. So for agents right now, I think they struggle with my books because they're not easily marketable, and that is
Mhm.
not their fault because I don't write them to be marketable very easily. So I think it's just a challenge, and I think people have found that hard. But hopefully someday that will get easier. Touch wood.
Well, in the meantime, it's available on the Evil A Word website as a Kindle, and highly recommend it. Uh, the book that you're referring to, is that what is with the on unknown things that's on your website? On unknown things, an artifact. I put up the slide here from your website. What is that about?
Oh, so that's one of the best projects I've done actually. I
Oh,
did it in 2020. I participated in this workshop or residency that was run by the Barbican in London, and it was this mad residency where they got a whole bunch of practitioners across different cultural spaces together, and they gave us no agenda. They just said create. Whatever happens, happens. What we're doing is we're holding space for you to just be yourselves.
ah, that's
And the things
beautiful.
that it threw up in terms of not just in ideas, but also in terms of vulnerability, and in terms of how you approached people and authenticity, I think were life changing for so many of the artists in there. Like it's left deep impacts. And 2 years on, I've spoken to so many people, and it's left deep impacts in their practice. And they came to me and they asked me, can you write a piece? They commissioned a piece from me that captures the feeling of this residency. And I knew instantly that to capture it, I would have to create a work where I don't know was at the center of it.
Hmm.
Uncertainty, doubt, flux, and fluidity was right at the center of it. So I designed on unknown things, which is essentially a notebook with loads of white space and cancelled out writing in between. And if you read it from beginning to end, it does create a narrative, but you also have space to write your own thoughts, write over the text, question the text, interrogate the text, basically record yourself. It's called Fieldwork of the Self inside. I love
Wow.
it. Yeah, it's so much fun to do. It's only printed for limited release, so it can't be bought anywhere. But I absolutely love it.
Very, very cool. Okay. Tashan, this is just absolutely a wonderful time. I hope you had a good time. We
It was
have to
brilliant.
wrap it up. Really wonderful. If there's a last question, I will pick it up. Again, the book is The Liar's Weave. The anthology is Magical Women, and you're also in the big Golantz. What is it?
The Glantz
South.
Book of Science Fiction, Volume 2.
Right. These books are here on the table here in front of us. If the camera can kind of zoom down a little bit, and if folks click on it, they will be transported magically to your website, and then they can check it out there. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. Thank you, Tashan. Thank you, audience in world. Lots of new faces today. Very, very cool. Also, oh, I forgot to mention this on the top of the hour. This place here will now be your place. It will also be what it was, which was originally a place built for Sharanya Manivanan, who is also a very talented writer. I enjoyed her books, and she actually has an illustrated. Um, I don't know if it's a graphic novel, but do check out her as well. And there's also, you can click on things it will be shot to her website, so you can go to both of these websites. Shadowblade in the audience asks me, Drax, could I chew on your boots? Absolutely. You can also eat that little chimp that is running around.
Oh
Um,
no.
if the camera can zoom on the chimp before he dies an untimely death being eaten by a snake here. This only happens here on the Second Life Book Club, Tasha. This doesn't happen anywhere else. Not
The-
even in CERN with a Large Hadron Collider. We might we might not have a particle. Oh my God, he's eating the chimp. No. Well, that's nature.
Thank you so much, Drax. This was incredible. Honestly, incredible. One of the best things I've done. Thank you for being such a wonderful audience, but also for such brilliant questions and such a great conversation.
My pleasure, our pleasure. Um, Please like and subscribe on YouTube. Consider joining the channel. Again, big thanks also to um, Kitten Duo and John and Glenn Zuckman on the YouTubes. I'm going to run through the credit slides. I must make sure that I have the correct credit slides. Last time I did the wrong ones. Second Life Book Club every Wednesday, 12 o'clock. slbookclub@draxter.com is the email. You can hit us with recommendations for books and authors. Show is produced by Isabel Sharen, Shyla, the Super Gecko, and myself. The location manager, master builder is Ruby. Ruby's not with us. The avatars are made by Ruby. This one was. Research by Shyla and Monkey. Now, we don't have a tip jar because Ruby is in charge of the tip jar. If you love this program, and we have a lot of people who very graciously tip, please tip Shyla directly and she will distribute. But Shyla really was the main lead today in research and preparing slides and all that. So that is really awesome. We have a lot of sponsors among the Second Life creative elites. Linden Lab is giving us these islands. Linden Lab is not paying us. Just want to be very clear about that. But they do give us these islands for free, which is cool. And all these other Second Life creators help us out by giving us their stuff. Please find links to the calendar, Discord, Flickr on the sandwich boards. Again, slbookclub@draxter.com, or you can message in world Jared Bot. And don't forget to tip Shyla. Shyla prepared these wonderful slides. I was going to Shyla and say, "Can you find the Saptapura universities?" And she says, "What? There are no universities." And go like, "Well, they're in the book. Uh, I need a visual of these universities." Oh, wait a minute. No, actually, I um, I found that out myself because Wikipedia told me. Next week, very important time change because we got a fellow from Australia. T.R. Napper is here. T.R. Napper is coming at 10 o'clock, um, second lifetime. 10 o'clock second lifetime. So please check that out because we had a hell of a time actually coordinating this and figuring out what is Australian AEST versus SLT. T.R. Nepper has written a cyberpunkish novel called 36 Streets. He also has a short story collection, which was his first book. I think it was called Neon Leviathan. But we're going to be talking about 36 Streets. If I have time, I'll also dive into the short stories. But I wanna really go deep into 36 Street. That's it. Thank you so much, folks. See you all next Wednesday, again at 10 o'clock. And I know Shadow, our snake here, is in Australia. He is in Australia. Shadow, 10 o'clock second lifetime is not 6 a.m. Australian time. It's 3 p.m. Trust me, I spent 2 days trying to figure this out. Thank you, everybody, and goodbye. See you next week.